couple weeks. How's it been going? Is everybody, there's less and less of you, right? Very good. That's the goal, right? And I'm proud to see you all here in March because I know it's a beautiful day and there's other things you could be doing. So thank you for taking the time to come and learn with us today. This presentation is titled Everyday Eating in the Real World. Somebody tell me what you think I mean by everyday eating in the real world. What would you think this topic is going to be about? Anybody know what they're up for here? Do you sometimes feel like you have to be on a diet year-round? Okay, so everyday eating in the real world is for when you finish Team Lean and you get to the last day, then what? And so it's not really the very last seminar, but it's just kind of to help transition you from diet mentality or weight loss mentality into lifestyle mentality. Does anybody feel like sometimes there's a big drop-off there when they've done diet before and you just feel like, okay, good, my 30 days is over. Back to your normal thing or whatever it is from those programs. So my goal in creating this seminar was to help you guys think ahead so that you don't find your life just being a yo-yo diet over and over and over. So you can get to some transition into the real world. Does anybody feel like they're already easing into the real world or you still feel like you're in like major January mode still? What do you think? You're still in January mode, which might be a good thing, right? Because if you ease too much into the spring and summer, you might get too relaxed to do well. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. The everyday ideal is balanced living, fun fitness, and joy in eating. So when people say, yeah, I'm doing really good, I hate working out, hate all the cardboard that I'm eating, I hate it. When I get that impression from people, guess how long I think they're going to last in the real world? Not very long. When their team stops meeting together or when the seminars stop happening, they're going to quit. So we have to help those people have a transition into the real world. And we have to be realistic. I love this saying by Mark Twain. It says, to promise not to do a thing is the surest way in the world to make a body want to go and do that very thing. Have y'all ever said, I'm not going to eat this, I'm just never going to have this again? And then for some reason it calls your name all day and night because you've committed to that. So there is a balance to be found in a lot of these things. And there might be a couple things that you have to say no to forever because they've gotten you in so much trouble. But for the most part, we can do a balance. So today we're going to cover some dining out highlights. Have you guys already talked about dining out some at a seminar? So I'm going to quiz you then instead. But I always like to touch base on this because I used to give the dining out seminar years ago, and I just want to make sure because this is an area that I see getting people into a lot of trouble. So I just want to make sure I cover it over again with you guys. Drinks, snacks, portions, sweet tooth, splurges and cautions, hunger, holidays, and planning. These are all the things that hold people back from staying where they are. So I want to help transition you through those things. Okay, so what are you eating right now on a typical day? Now, I've been a registered dietitian for almost 20 years, and I hear people tell me what they're eating all the time. And a lot of times when people are dieting or watching their weight, they tell me I eat the same thing every day. Here's what I eat. And they tell me. And then I wonder what they're going to do when one day they get sick of that very thing. So this part of helping you transition from that. How many of you feel like you're a little bit bored with what you're eating? Raise your hand. You can be honest. A little bit bored with what you're eating? You need some variety? You're enjoying it still? Very good. And that's the point, is it doesn't have to be gross and awful. And you know, for me, there's a lot of exercises that I like to do, but I love to run, but if I only ran as my 5-day-a-week exercise, that wouldn't last very long because that would get old to me. Now, some of you, that's your favorite thing and you don't tire of it at all. But for me, I like a big difference. In fact, I've been teaching aerobics for so long that if I go to the same gym 2 days in a row, my kids are like, we were at this gym yesterday, Mom, because they're so used to me teaching at different gyms. And so I love that variety, and I've gotten really used to it. So a lot of times you have to start thinking about variety in your food and in your exercise in order to stay strong long term. But I do have a lot of people say they're doing oatmeal and coffee for breakfast, turkey on wheat for lunch, and then grilled chicken and vegetables for dinner, or grilled fish and vegetables. And it's good to try to spice it up. And your body will ask you to spice it up and change it up even over time because there's different nutrients that you need. Even if you're eating really healthy from day to day, you need different healthy nutrients that your body could use. Okay? So if you're on a special diet now or some sort of plan that you have in your head, raise your hand if you see yourself sticking to that long term, the way you're doing now. Okay, about a third of you. The rest of you guys aren't going to stick with it? Okay, if you're not sticking with it, I hope you have a plan for whatever you're going to do. But if it's some sort of Hollywood diet that's kind of unreasonable, you may not be able to stick with it. So I want you to think about transitioning. And then this is what some people do. They just skip breakfast, lunch, and dinner and feel like that's the best thing. And if you've tried that, Usually what it does is it sets you up for a binge later, because there's certain body functions that require calories before you go to bed to handle your liver and your brain, and your body says, "Oh, before you go to bed, quick, grab some cold pizza out of the fridge," and you say, "Okay," to help the body carry out its function. So if you do too much meal skipping, it will get you in trouble. Have anybody experienced that before? Anybody experienced that before? You're like, "I'm not even that hungry, I'm good," and then later you're like, "I'm so hungry." Okay, it gets you back. Okay, so we can't skip meals. All right, so what really works? And I reviewed this briefly at one of the first seminars, so I wanted to bring it back up because this is something that we've seen. Now, this research is specifically on an obese population, because if you've lost 30 pounds, usually you would have been qualified as obese to start, which is a little more than overweight. So our Team Lean folks are anywhere in that range of overweight and obese. Some people have 10 pounds to lose, some people have 30. And there's a little difference, because when you've lost 30 pounds, that's a really big deal to gain all that back, right? You don't want to do that big of a change and then gain all that back. And so this specific group, called the National Weight Control Registry, it studies people who have kept 30 pounds off for more than a year. And so these are some of the things that we see that is consistent with them. They eat breakfast. Now, this isn't saying the research says you have to eat breakfast to keep 30 pounds off. Does everybody see the difference? This is an association of when these people were surveyed, this is what they found that everybody did that stuck with this weight loss. They ate breakfast, they exercised consistently, their eating patterns were consistent. Does anybody hear a word being repeated there? Consistent, okay? And that was my 2016 buzzword, because you can do anything somewhat consistently and not get any good results, right? So you can have a really good Monday and Tuesday and wonder why you're not having the results you want, right? About a fourth of your calories from fat, and all that's saying is it's not a super low fat diet and it's not a super high fat diet. It's just saying it's a moderate fat diet. And you keep food and weight records. Raise your hand if you've been keeping food logs or exercise logs. Almost half of you. I would say a lot of people tell me the minute I quit doing that, I'm pretty much giving up on myself. Now, not everybody's like that, but if you find that accountability keeps you strong, and a lot of you guys are nodding, then stay with that, even if you finally move to a different pattern that's not as tedious, maybe, that you can do it just a sight check is what I'm going to teach you guys about today. That's still an accountability piece. And no single diet or program has emerged as the best. Now, I think this is interesting. I present for this one conference on fad diets every year. I just got back from Philly presenting there, and every year I look up the new research on all the different diets to see, and this bottom line has almost always stayed the same, almost for the whole 20 years I've been working in this field. The bottom line is there's really never one diet that says, "Oh, this is the one everybody should do." Though there's many that come out every few years, there's really, what works for people really is what they can be consistent with. So if you say, "Well, I can be really consistent with a no sugar diet because I'm too tempted once I start with sugar," that might be you. Or you say, I can be really consistent with a higher protein diet because I love meat and it keeps me full. Or you might say things, and then there's some, you can do your version, but then you have to make sure that you're strong and at your best during that. So the main thing is if you are doing a diet and it's working, but you're kind of dragging around, feeling kind of wimpy, that's really not the goal, to be skinny and wimpy, I don't think, right? Okay. So that point is at the 1 year point, there's almost no difference from one diet to the other. So it's kind of encouraging that you and someone else on your team could be doing a different method and it could still be okay. Though I will say, after working with people for so long, there are some things that people can do over years and years that I really see that are negative, and we'll talk about a couple of those just to warn you of those. At 6 months, weight loss tends to stop regardless. Most people don't have enough weight that they need to lose to keep losing weight after 6 month point, which is good. And exercise alone showed no weight loss at 12 months, and this is consistent over many years too. And so as much as I love the Y, and I've been teaching aerobics for over 20 years, which makes me sound really old, but I started it very young, so I love teaching fitness, but I know that if that's all I do and I don't do the nutrition piece and take care of myself, then that's not enough. How many of you guys have thought personally before that maybe exercise by itself would be enough, and then you hit a point where you realized it wasn't enough? Raise your hand if that's you. We have a few people saying that. That happens to a lot of people. They say, "Well, all I need to do is exercise," and then they realize they can easily, in 10 minutes, eat back what they just burned off. So if they don't start making these changes and overall changes, it won't help. So, and if you need help, professional counseling with dietitians is really helpful for people if you feel like you're stuck, or if you feel like you get stuck as time goes on. Like was told to you guys already, I'm at the Marshall branch in Evans if you want some help. Okay? Okay, so we're going to talk about dining out a little bit. I told you we would. So you paid for it. You feel like you should clean your plate. You know, it's a little more expensive than at home, and you may or may not like leftovers coming home in a box, so you feel like you just have to finish it. A lot of people say that. The chef isn't concerned about your waistline at all. Sometimes they scoop way more butter and shake way more salt in there than you might ever do. My favorite part about eating out is that you don't even have to stand up to cook or get your own dishes, so you don't even burn those calories. And that's really not my favorite part. My point is, if you're cooking, you're standing up for at least 10 minutes, and you might even clean up the kitchen for at least 10 minutes. So you're actually moving and burning calories, even if you never ate the dinner you prepared. So there's lots of pieces to cooking, and that's part of an active lifestyle. It's a good deal to supersize, and that's very tempting, that if you can get the half portion of something for $7 and the whole portion for $9, why wouldn't you just go up? And you might tell yourself, I'm going to have this for lunch tomorrow, and then all of a sudden your plate's clean. I'm seeing a lot of sort of rosy cheeks on that one, little guilty faces, and that's okay. I'm just saying things that I've seen that are normal from humankind. The Center for Science and Public Interest is a CSPI, and they found that restaurants serve about 2 to 3 times the portions that we would have at home. That's the general consensus of restaurant eating. What would you say? When you go to a restaurant, you get that plate. When you guys go home, do you make a big old plate like that? Your spouse will be like, what are you doing? And you're like, well, just living like I did yesterday at the restaurant. But we don't really do that at home. Or like, a 12-inch sub is about 6 pieces of bread. So people go to Subway and just eat a 12-inch sub, no big deal. But if you go home and you make yourself 3 sandwiches, your spouse will be like, what are you doing? That is weird. Why are you doing that? Are you about to go do a big race or something? What's going on with the 3 sandwiches? As if you're like a teenage basketball player. Okay, so that is unlikely for you to need that much. But when we go out to eat, for some reason, it's okay. All right, so what we need to do when we eat out, I'm going to give you the ones that I've seen, because you can do a whole hour seminar as you've seen on dining out. I'm just going to give you the highlights of the ones I've seen make the biggest difference. First of all, the biggest thing is planning. And we talked about this the first week that I was here, that not everybody's a planner, but usually you marry one if you're not. Or you have a roommate that's one if you're not, or a sibling. A lot of times we balance each other out so you can lean into somebody else's skills in your family maybe. But the best thing to do is plan ahead, because if you don't have a plan for dinner tonight and you're really hungry and your car's on the road and you're not at home, what might you do? You might find yourself in a drive-through, okay? You might find yourself doing takeout, something like that. And eating out is not in itself bad, but it's just really hard to eat out healthfully. And even if you make really healthy choices, you might just get more than you meant to. So then you have to have a lot of self-control to eat the portion you still would have at home. So that's tricky. So my biggest suggestion when it comes to eating out is set a limit on how many times a week you'll do it and stick to it. So if you know that in the weekend you like to eat out 2 times, and during the week you're tending to eat out a lot too, think about it and think, okay, I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to set the limit for you, but everybody should pick a limit and try to stick to it so that they don't just let themselves get kind of lax about planning and then you end up there all the time. Plus, it's the same people that tell me I don't have enough money to eat healthy, and I'm like, that's confusing me. Okay, because you can get a lot more groceries than you can get one family out to eat, about the same as a grocery trip sometimes, couple nights out to eat. So use that money to buy healthy, lean meat cuts and fresh fruits and vegetables and things like that instead of always eating out, unless it's just really your favorite, and then instead of just kind of happening by there and being somewhere you didn't really want to be, right? So how many of you plan what you're going to eat at the restaurant before you go? Does anybody do that? That's really helpful. And you can think about what you already had during the day and what you haven't had enough of yet. If you haven't had your green vegetables yet, or if you've already had too many carbs, then you can think about having a salad for dinner, or kind of think through your day. And that's smart, because when you get to the restaurant, are you as smart as when you were on the way? Somehow we just, we sit in front of the basket of chips and we're just not as smart as we were 10 minutes ago. And a lot of times it has to do with being hungry, or standing at a wait, or sometimes it just has to do with the smell of fresh bread just kind of coming up right under your nose. So there's lots of different things, but we need to plan it ahead. And even if you're sitting with somebody out to eat, you can tell them, when we get there, guess what I'm going to order? And there's just a little accountability you're pushing out there. And accountability is huge. It really is big, big, big to success that's long term. Okay, if you can put it on the side, do it or skip it. Your waiter might be a little bit annoyed with you, but I have 2 kids with anaphylactic food allergies, and this is the magic thing to say to the waiters, because this is what you say. You say, they say, hi, my name's Joey. I'll be serving you tonight. Hey, Joey, are you feeling patient tonight? And he's like, oh, well, yes, ma'am. All of a sudden he's on his game, because I asked him to be patient. I've got some kids with some issues, instead of just worrying that he's going to spit in your food because you have to ask him to put everything on the side. Okay? So don't worry about that. That is no excuse to have your baked potato fully loaded with 450 calories of sour cream and butter because you don't want to bug the server. Just sweetly say, hey, I'm working hard at getting to my best body. Would you mind being patient with me tonight? And that just puts them on their game, okay? All the servers in Augusta will be like, everybody keeps telling me this. I'm working on this. So if it can be put on the side, do that because, again, if you trust your salad to the server and they just kind of go crazy on the ranch, then what are you going to do? Eat it. Very unlikely that you'll be like, oh, no, this isn't what I meant. And so just have them put on the side, then you can drizzle it on yourself. And you have no idea sometimes how much they're putting. I mean, they put a lot more than you might. Okay, and when eating out, visualize the right portion and set aside the rest. So the first week that I was here in January, I talked to you guys about a plate. And this is really important for success for long term because sometimes you will get tired of doing MyFitnessPal and doing all your food logs. And this is sort of an adapted, graduated way of doing it. And you look at your plate and you divide it in half. And what goes on the big, happy, smiley face on the bottom? Who remembers? Vegetables, peas, corn, potatoes, right? Okay, trick question. Those are starchy vegetables, so those aren't the devil, but they just don't need to fill up a whole big smiley face of your plate. So the half of your plate should be non-starchy veggies like what? Broccoli, greens, salads. It can be a veggie soup. It doesn't have to be raw or cooked. It can be any variety. It can be stuffed into your pita. It can be cooked into an omelet. It doesn't have to be just a pile of green beans on your plate if that gets old to you. Okay? So when you're doing that, that's the first thing you do at a restaurant is you think about half of that plate being veggies. And if you're looking down the options and they don't have any sides that are veggies, which is very typical, then you go to your patient waiter or waitress who's already declared that they will be happy to be patient with you, and you say, what can I sub out that's a veggie for these fries? Because you might think you have the willpower to face the fries, but you just might not be able to once they get right on your plate, right under your nose, right? And everybody's shaking their head like, I've confessed I don't, right? It's just too hard sometimes. So don't put yourself in the position. Okay, and then there's fast food. A lot of people say we just do this because it's fast. But in the end, what could you do perhaps that's a little faster if you spend 5 minutes planning? The food goes down really fast. You can eat a fast food meal in 10 minutes and get your whole calorie, fat, sodium quota for the day. It's fast. It's fast in lots of ways. Your body makes fat tissue out of some fast food really fast, especially if it's a lot of sugar-laden sodas, because your body's like, I really have nothing to do with this. I can do something with those fries a little bit. You know, I can do something with a little bit of this, but this whole big soda you got, I'm just going to pad your rear with it. That's all I've got. And that's what happens. And of course, you get the meal deal because it's better than not, and then you just, you're not going to drink the whole soda, but then you do. So just don't put yourself in that position. If you're a normal person, you'll find yourself eventually making normal person mistakes. Okay? So be careful just to use the excuse about fast. There are some other things that are pretty fast that you can do. Sometimes you can run into a grocery store and use those legs and burn a little calories while you're kind of fast walking in and out as quick as you can go around. Here's a Publix and here's a McDonald's. Let's see who's fastest. You go through the car line and I'll hustle into the produce section and grab me a salad and come out and see who's the fastest. It might be me. It might be whoever's on their feet, and then they got a little bonus calorie burn. So let's think about how we can do things even if we're in a pinch with time. Okay, so let's think about how fast it burns off. And I talked about this a little bit. These are just some examples. A Wendy's Frosty, which is not huge, burns off in about 60 minutes of brisk walking after a 60-minute water aerobics class. Okay, now I'm not trying to be, Debbie Downer on this. I do think it's really important that we know this, though. And I'm researching right now for a blog. I sent out a survey yesterday to a bunch of people. And some of you might be on my email list if you've come to these seminars before. And I sent out a survey that says, answer these 5 questions about this past weekend. And I've had about 100 responses so far today. And it's really fun, and I would love for you guys to respond too. So you just can go on my Facebook page, and then you respond to these 5 surveys, these 5 questions about your weekend, and it's anonymous. But you just say what that is, because it helps people realize that when it's the weekend, sometimes they just kind of let loose, and then they spend Monday through Friday undoing what they did on the weekend. And so this survey is really going to be eye-opening for people to see, because already every time somebody puts it in, all day I've been like, ooh, oh. It's just so interesting and fun to see what people are doing on the weekend. So if you want to do that survey, if you'll go on my Facebook page whenever you can, by tomorrow, I'm going to be closing the survey tomorrow because it's from the weekend. But it's just Best Body in 52, and there's a survey right at the top. I would love your input, because what we're going to do is show people are asked what they ate on the weekend differently than they do Monday through Friday, and we'll break it down into kind of how that looks for people during the week. It'll be very interesting. Okay, So what about the McDonald's Selects chicken nuggets? The word selects makes me think they've selected the leanest of meat, but that's not necessarily the case. I remember when that first came out, I was like, oh, good for McDonald's. They're selecting lean. Just one word can throw us off sometimes, right? The word wheat somewhere on the box makes you think, oh, this is good, it's whole wheat. But that's just simply an hour-long, full-intensity spinning class, and then go home and mow the lawn with the push mower for an hour. How many of y'all do spinning classes? Raise your hand. It's a fabulous, very hard workout. Okay, it's a very tough workout. It burns lots of calories. What about Chick-fil-A's chicken sandwich, small fry, and regular Coke? Does that sound an excessive lunch? Small fry, regular Coke? No, but you've got your fries and your sandwich are both fried, and then the Coke is, remember what your daddy does with Coke. We already talked about that. And then if you're doing an 11.5-minute mile pace, you can run for 60 minutes to get it off. Now, what I don't want you to do is think, okay, at 8 400 calories, I got to go burn 400 calories. At 8 600 calories, I got to go burn. That's just not how life works, because we have a great thing called our basal metabolic rate that burns calories for us while we're not even thinking about it, which is a blessing. So you don't have to I'm not trying to train your brain to get all crazy. But what I do want you to know is if you have these extra 400 and 600 calorie splurges, that is the same amount or more than your workout. So if your goal is to get to the stubborn fat tissue, you won't get to it if you keep having those 400 and 600 calorie splurges. Does that make sense? So just keep that in mind, because that's really important. I would say that's the number one problem I've seen over the years of doing this job, is that people work out hard and then fight it back by doing whatever it is on the weekend usually, or the late nights after 9 p.m. sometimes. And it's not that it's after 9, it's what you choose after 9 usually that gets you into trouble. Would you guys agree? Do you guys always have salmon salad at 9:30 p.m.? It's just not as appetizing as a big bowl of ice cream for some people. Okay. So think about what's fast. I have 3 little children, so if I'm cooking, I almost always cook a double batch. Now that they get a little bigger, they think that means they're supposed to eat a double batch, and that's kind of backfiring on me. So I'll say, Mommy's making twice as much, but not so that you can just have 4 servings. So I have these busy boys. But the leftovers, if you plan ahead, you can package them ahead. You can not put them out on the plate or at the table so that they can be planned ahead for another day. And that is really helpful. And there's some foods that taste better left over than others, so you can play around with that a little bit. Frozen homemade meals that you prepared extra of, like a lasagna or a casserole, if you're ever going to make those, they freeze real easy. So to do a double would be good. Frozen dinners, be watching out for fat and sodium on frozen dinners. Here's another thing that gets people in trouble with frozen dinners. About how many calories are in a frozen dinner? Who knows? Give me an answer. Somebody said 900. I don't see too many 900 calorie frozen dinners. Let me hear some other numbers. It's usually 500 or less. And the healthy choice ones that I see a lot of people doing, which are healthier choices than some of the others, are what? 300, 280? Okay, I need to make sure everybody knows this. The goal is not to eat as few calories as you can survive with. It's not. It backfires on people big time. Now, you might not be anywhere near that. You're like, don't worry. I'm still barely getting my calories down. But probably about half of you have come to that point where you're like, well, if I lost 4 pounds doing that, then I might lose 5 pounds doing this. And you get too low and your metabolism backfires on you. So I see that all the time. Be very, very careful not to think, oh, that worked, take it to an extreme and it'll work better, because your body's meant to survive and it will not tolerate that well at all. Okay, so keep in mind that the goal is not to eat as very little as possible. So if you're eating a 200 calorie healthy choice meal, you need to have something probably with it or another meal planned 2 hours after. Because if 280 calories can hold you from 12 noon to 7 p.m., you've got to move a lot more between 12 and 7. Okay? That means you're too sedentary probably. Okay? So be thinking about that. A meal, if you're having a meal with a few hours after, 3 to 5 hours afterward, then you don't want to go under 300, or maybe 350 would be the lightest. So the goal is not just to get as very little on your plate as you can tolerate. And usually if you do in the day, your body requires you to make up for it at night when your brain is less focused on what your goals are. Would you agree? Some of you guys experienced this before, anybody? Okay. I won't make you stand up and tell us all about it, but I hear about it all the time. Okay. So a quick sandwich at home, heaven forbid you just make a sandwich sometimes. You know, sometimes that's just, you got 5 minutes. Instead of going all the way out and having a big splurge dinner, just make a sandwich. Soup, I always try to make a big pot of soup in the crock pot when I make it and freeze it in little containers so that it's really easy to have later. If you work somewhere where there's a freezer, you can stack some of those freezer containers in the back, so that's really convenient. So some of this is sort of obvious. You're thinking, well, you don't have to remind me of that, but sometimes you do have to remind it. Sometimes you go home and your freezer has nothing in it to back you when you need to make good choices. So you want your fridge to be on your side. Okay, if I came home to your house right now and I opened your fridge, I'd be like, oh, your fridge is working against you. Okay, you don't want your fridge to be your enemy by what you've put in it. All right, prepared, bagged, and deli salads. Those are really, really handy for getting those veggies in if you know you're not going to have time to wash and chop and do all those things when you get home and you just want to be able to throw things together. Those are really handy. Do you have a refrigerator at work? If you do, you can really make the most of that. If not, you can get some great coolers that they have now that keeps things really cold, like those Yetis and all that stuff can keep things cold all day. No excuses, okay? Oh, and this last one I do like, we'll talk more about snacks in a minute, but I told y'all this, I think, on the first week, that people really tell me that they have to eat on their way home because they won't make it. And I'm like, wow. You know, I'm like, they commute to Atlanta every day for work, and they will not make it home. And it really is funny. Like, sometimes when they tell me that, I just sit there for a minute and let them think about what they just said and realize, like, well, I probably could have stayed alive for 8 more minutes. But we really need to be careful. And if we really feel like that, then we've probably let our blood sugar get too low by going too long. And so sometimes we need to strategically snack, and we'll talk about that in a second. All right, so here's the dining out do's. We talked about some of the don'ts. Here's the dining out do's. Decide in advance that you don't do supersize, you don't do refills, and you don't do the bread and chips and all that until your food comes. Okay, this could be a lifetime change from here forth. Forevermore. And people say, do you let your kids have sodas? Sure, every once in a while, but they know that we don't ever refill a soda. Like, if we're going to have it every once in a while, please don't ever walk back over to that little streaming machine and go, because that's just dangerous. So it's just kind of like one of those lifelong keep myself healthy rules. Is just to say to yourself, refills, no thank you. Because if you're having something that gets refilled, it's usually a kind of a splurgy thing anyway, right? Like bottomless fries and all these things that they have. It's usually things we don't really need refilled anyway. And this is a really great concept if you get overwhelmed and tempted to eat like a basket of chips or a basket of bread when you're at a restaurant, is you can just ask, if the people that you're with would be so gracious to you, you can just ask, hey, can we wait to get to the basket till the food comes? Because how likely are you to stack 6 pieces of bread on your plate when your food comes? Much less likely than you would be eating 6 pieces of little hot bread slices before it comes. So you can just say, you know what, from March 2016 on, that's a simple thing I can do. I'm not limiting myself forever on everything, but I'm just not going to do doubles and refills and all that. So you get your chips sometimes, but you put them on your plate instead of just scooting the basket under your chin, right? That's dangerous, okay? All right, so when you order your beverage, you can tell them, when this goes down, if you wouldn't mind bringing me a water. Just tell them from the beginning, when you order your food, tell your patient server that that's what you would like, and then they would be so kind to do that instead of refilling it when you're not even looking, and meanwhile you're having a 2-liter of Coke and you didn't even realize it. Until you get up all night having to get rid of it, right? Okay, sweet tea is not as bad as soda. People do ask me that all the time. But eating it out 2 times a week and having 1 refill each time means 3.5 extra miles. Again, I'm not saying every time you drink a tea you need to think about how much you need to walk, but I need you to be aware. Because people say, I'm eating so good, I don't know why I'm not doing so good. And then they just go out to eat a couple times and do a few splurgy things, and it backfires and sabotages their hard efforts. And in my opinion, you guys are doing awesome. You're here in March, still hanging in there. There's a lot of people around you that looked at you the first week. Remember I told y'all to look at the person beside you and say, I'll see you back on March 8th? Those who were here that first week with me, and then some of them didn't come. And you guys did, so you're the ones that are doing great. So just keep up that great work and don't let those things sabotage you. You got to be ready. Okay, so now we're going to talk about drinks for a few minutes. Most of the research about drinks will tell you that they have gotten America especially into lots and lots of trouble. And years ago, I used to work in a WIC clinic 1 day a week, and the main reason that my obese kids were obese was drinks, and the main reason my malnourished kids were malnourished was drinks. Because one, you don't eat because you drink so much, and one, you eat and drink so much, or you drink so much because you can drink many calories very quickly compared to a meal that you chew. So another thing that you might want to do from March forward of 2016 is just to really reconsider your drinks. How many miles of brisk walking would it take to burn off the following in 1 day? Okay, and tell me if you think this is an excessive day. This is not multiple cups of orange juice, it's just 1 tall glass, 1 can of Coke at lunch, or any soda, a midday Starbucks Frappuccino, on a drive-through or something on the way home. Sweet tea with 1 refill at dinner. Do y'all think that sounds crazy, or is that pretty normal, average Georgia person? Pretty average for a lot of people. How many miles do you need to work in that week if you have a day like that? 13. And I'm not saying, again, that every time you drink it, you're like 2 more miles. My point's not that, but I'm just saying if your body was meant to take in mostly water and some milk and some juice, but you decide to take in things that we weren't really meant to drink a bunch of soda bubbles all the time. If we're not meant to do that, then we have to think, all right, can I be on my feet for, let's see, the average mile is walked in about 20 to 30 minutes times 13. Do I have that kind of time today? Okay? Most people don't. And so that's what happens is over time people gain 10 pounds a year, 10 pounds a year, and it just keeps creeping on. And it's because of things like this. And you know what happens? The research shows that this doesn't make you feel like you ate something. But that's enough calories for almost a whole day. And your body doesn't think you ate anything. And I love this one study. It was a jelly beans versus Kool-Aid or soda or some sort of caloric beverage. And they had people eat exactly 400 calories worth of jelly beans and exactly 400 calories worth of soda. And people who ate the jelly beans, at least their body registered that you had food earlier. Jelly beans is kind of, food's a strong word for jelly beans, but their body chewed something and had to digest a little bit, and so it sent a signal to their brain that they've had a snack, whereas they had the same amount of calories in liquid, and their body never said you had a snack. So be cautious if you drink your calories, because a lot of times your body doesn't count those, and you think, I didn't have lunch, but kind of you did. It wasn't a balanced lunch, but you had as many lunch calories as that healthy choice dinner that somebody sitting beside you is having. You see how that adds up? Okay, so be cautious about drinks. Again, if there's something you can say from here forth, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. Now, if some of you are like, no, it is worth it. Okay, I can hear some of you saying it's my very, very favorite thing. And if it is your very, very favorite thing and you love it as much as your team loves chocolate or whatever it is, then you've got to figure out, where can I have this in a controlled setting? Should I bring a 2-liter home if it's my very favorite, most addicted thing? What do you think? Good idea or bad idea? Bad idea. But if it's your very, very favorite thing and you go to an event where they give you an event with a Coke, well, would that be kind of safe? Because at least you got your 12 ounce and you walked away. And so hopefully you wouldn't go back and back. Okay, so sometimes, you have it at a concession stand or at an event somewhere, then you're not as likely to have so much, and you don't get the big gulpy thing, because that's 2 days worth of calories. Okay? So be careful. All right, so on to snacks a little bit. This is actually an excerpt from my cookbook, which is back here, and we'll have a chance to look at it after you finish our seminar. If you're interested, it helps you with some planning. And this is infused water. Would somebody grab one of those water bottles out of the back for me there? I meant to grab one on the way up, if somebody wouldn't mind burning an extra few calories to do so. And if you have these at home, these are my 2 favorite waters, and they're real easy. And there's some more in the cookbook that are a little more tricky. Thank you. But do you guys ever do fruit water? Okay, this is my answer to people who say, do you mind if I put a few drops of, can I put a packet of? I get this question all day long, and my answer is no, but if you'll, not no forever, but it's just not the best thing. If you're trying to reach your best body during Team Lean, you don't necessarily want to start all these new habits of little packets of chemicals, right? That's probably not the best thing. So if you have any of these, you pop open this and you fill it with mint or oranges, or in this case, if you make a little fruit salad, you could save a little bit. If you wanted to do, my favorite is the oranges, the cantaloupes, and the strawberries together, but I don't always make time for that. Sometimes I just do it orange. And it makes, and I'm not a high maintenance water person, I don't have to have ice, or, I'm easy, but when you put that orange in there, it's like, I want to drink this. And so if you find that you hate water and you need to make it a little more enjoyable, try to do it with real fruit. And that's why I got these made. They have a reminder of some of the things we need to do to stay at our best. And you just shake it up and it immediately tastes good. So it's a great idea, and you can do mint or something that's a lot easier, so you don't have to chop up fruit and stuff if you don't have time. But we'll have these today, and if you have them at home, you can soak fruit in the bottom of a pitcher overnight is another way to do it. So there's lots of different ways to do it, but let's try not to get into a new soda habit with diet sodas or Diet Crystal Light and things like that, because the longer I've done this job, the more I've seen the research kind of go, In fact, now Splenda is on the warning list. For those of you who all just moved to Splenda. So it's on the warning list. So who knows how long it'll be before they take that out. So let's just be cautious. And the good thing, and I'm such a sweet lover, so I can say this from experience, the good thing about backing off from it is your mouth will adjust to it. And I have this big challenge that I do with people where they go off of sugar for the most part for a week. And if I confess my honest truth to you guys, the week did not do it for me. All my people were like, at 4 days, I'm over it. And I'm like, I'm on 7 days and I still want sugar. And all these people want to just be done with it, and I'm still wanting it. But after some considerable time of sticking to it, your taste buds, then you go to eat that, regular milk chocolate when you're used to dark chocolate and it just tastes so syrupy, or you go to have a sip of soda and it just tastes not even enjoyable. So your taste buds will adjust if you stick with it, okay? So it's worth giving your body time. And you'll drink this fresh, fruity water and it'll taste so good, and then you'll go to get a real processed Crystal Light and it won't taste good at all. So your body will adjust to the good stuff. Okay, and then here's also a shake. There's lots of different recipes in there, but you guys can take a peek at that. It's just really simple. Banana, ice, milk, cocoa, vanilla Greek yogurt, and some natural creamy peanut butter, and shake it up, and it's a monkey shake. You can put it in a blender. You don't really just want to shake it. That won't do the peanut butter right. Okay? All right, so which defines a snack? And this is something I've talked to you guys about before too. Anything at all that I eat when it's not mealtime, anything I get from a vending machine, something that's salty, something that's sweet, anything I eat standing up, whatever I find in a 100-calorie pack. No, it's supposed to be food to help hold me from one balanced meal to the next so that I don't get too hungry. So a lot of people think snacks are supposed to sound like this when you open them, okay? But that's not necessarily the case, okay? They're just supposed to hold you between usually lunch and dinner, and maybe breakfast and lunch if you wake up pretty early and you start your day pretty early. And it's also an opportunity to think, what did I miss at my last meal? I was somewhere where they were serving a meal and they didn't really have very many veggies, so I can work that into my snack so you can make sure your nutrition is balanced out over the day. Okay? Here's what I consider a strong snack, and I've come up with this term to help people realize that it's okay to have a big snack as long as it's a strategic big snack. Because I find that a lot of people just need a big snack to prevent them from getting into trouble. Okay? And most of the people I work with, when I get them onto this strong snack idea, most of them come back and tell me later, like, that saved me. That kept me from getting into the trouble that I was getting myself into. And this is what I mean. It's strategically scheduled to ward off the hungry monster. Has anyone ever met this hungry monster? Okay? What he does is he makes you, people are like, me. He makes you eat things you didn't even really like. Just whatever's close by, cold fries off of someone's plate when you're cleaning up. You're making kids' lunches, you're eating kids' lunches, just all kinds of weird things he makes you do. And all you could have done maybe was just scheduled a strong snack at that time. If it's nighttime, you might should just go to bed, right? Sometimes I'm like, I want a snack, but really I just need to go to bed. Or sometimes you might catch yourself saying, you know what, I remember Sohailla saying that if I ate too little, that my body would ask me for more calories to finish its functions before bed. So let me think about the day. Maybe I just got too busy and did not fuel myself well, which some of you don't have that problem at all, but a lot of people do. So be careful and cautious and assess yourself. It keeps you from going more than 4 hours. 3 to 5 hours usually is that limit that one meal can hold you for, and once you pass over that, a lot of times you get into that place where you're setting yourself up for the hungry monster to come visit. Aim for a strong snack that has at least 5 grams of protein and 3 grams of fiber. That's pretty easy to remember, but that will help you have something with some balance, because if you have a snack that doesn't have that, you might need another snack in an hour, and then another hour. And then some people say to me, well, isn't grazing fine? Like, I thought grazing was fine if you just kind of eat all day. But here's the thing, nobody grazes on broccoli. Nobody grazes on omega-3 rich fish. So grazing is okay. You might get your fruits and vegetables in, but you still have to eat those balanced, healthy foods. So be careful about grazing. The other thing grazing does, I think, is puts food on your radar for too long of the day, in my opinion. Because if your pantry is always open, then that's how many times you're giving yourself the chance to make an indulgence that you didn't mean to do, that you've already worked so hard at your spin class or whatever this morning to do. Now, some of you guys have perfect self-control and food is not your challenge, and something else might be, and that's okay. Everybody's got their challenges. But if the more, for me, I want a breakfast that's going to hold me all the way till lunch. If I'm hungry within 2 hours of eating my breakfast, I don't have time for that. I'm teaching a class at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. most mornings. I don't have time to be getting hungry right then. I need to have a good breakfast. So make sure you set yourself up to not be hungry all the time, because that just makes you think about food all the time, and that's not a healthy balance. That's not what we're meant to be thinking about all the time. Okay? All right, and some people say, well, if I do that, then it'll spoil my supper. So if you spoil your supper with something that would have been on your supper plate because it was healthy anyway, then it's really not spoiling it. You're just distributing it to a more healthy part of the day for a balance. So even if it's 300 calories at 4 o'clock, if it keeps you from having a 700 calorie evening like you might do many nights, then it was worth it because it balances it out. Do you see what I'm saying? So think about that if it's worth it to you. There's a lot of different strong snacks in the cookbook. I would love if you guys wanted to pass that around. If somebody back there, would you like to do this for me? Would you mind? I can't reach quite that far. If you'll grab one of each of those books and just let people pass them around in case they want to flip through them while we go, just so you know you have these resources to kind of propel you. It has a 6-week menu plan so that when this is done, if you need something to kind of help keep you on course, that could help you. If you just pass them out and people can pass them around. Don't feel like you have to look at them, but just in case you need some resources. Okay, so think about something, and I have a suggestion that it would be a fruit, a healthy fat, and a dairy or non-dairy alternative that has calcium, because those are some of the things that would help hold you based on all the science of protein and calcium and fiber and all those things in there. So that's just a good suggestion to get started. What about eating straight out of a box or a bag? Dangerous, okay? Put it on the plate first, right? All right, and read the label, because some things that you think are 2 servings or 1 serving, you know, like you get a Gatorade and you thought that was 1 serving, and then you look after you drink it that it was 4. Okay, so you have to do the math 4 times. That's on there, okay, times 4. So be careful of servings. A lot of times they'll get you. Okay, and then here are some strong snack suggestions, like a healthy harvest muffin. I have that recipe for you. Sweet protein perfection, which is a ricotta snack with fruit on top, and it just kind of blends together nicely. If you're more of a savory, rather than sweets, you might want to do something like the avocado salsa topper. It's really good dipped in vegetables. Some different things like that. They have this at Costco. I haven't seen it many other places. The classic 3C Dr. Cracker. It's a crisp bread. Crisp breads are those long flat crackers. They have them in Wassa and Rye Crisp and some other ones. Those are pretty good because they only have like 2 or 3 ingredients. And they don't taste super yummy by themselves usually. They are good with like tuna salad or peanut butter on them though, and they're not as likely to be overdone. Like if you give me a box of Wheat Thins, I kind of just want to keep eating them. But if you give me a Wassa cracker, it's filling and it tastes nice, but it doesn't have that little bit of sugar that they put in the Wheat Thins that makes me want to keep eating them. Okay, so those are those 3 columns that I mentioned to you about the dairy or non-dairy alternative, fruit, and a healthy fat. Okay? Okay, and so another thing about eating healthy every day in the real world is if you always weigh every day on the scale, do you want to keep doing that every day the rest of your life? No, my hope is that you'll find a place that you can just get rid of the scale and you'll be able to tell if your britches are real tight, if you need to fly straighter. Now, some people who were in that weight control registry that I told you about, people who have lost over 30 pounds and kept it off, usually the heavier you are and the more weight you lose, the more helpful it is for you to have the scale. And the reverse is usually also true. When people have 5 or 10 pounds to go, the scale makes them a little crazy because all those little fluctuations are noticed. So the scale might not be part of your everyday real world once Team Lean is over. So be thinking about whether it's helpful for you or not. Same with measuring and weighing foods. I had a client this morning, actually, that messaged me and said, for almost 20 years now straight, I've measured everything I've eaten and weighed every day, and she's in just extreme bondage to food. Just can't move on from it. And it's just taken her whole life over. And pretty much, we don't want to feed you into Team Lean and put you in a place like that. We want to encourage you to find a balance in it. So I suggest that you visualize that portion on your plate. The half a plate is the veggies, and the top quarters are lean protein and carb, which can be starch or grain or both, in a small spot. And it's a small spot. It's smaller than your fist for most people, a little larger if you use a lot more energy. Okay, and so forever, if it gets to be too much for you to write it down, just look at your plate, divide it in half. I've been doing this all my life, so it makes such good sense. You just look at it, divide it in half, and if things are off and you get into a time where you just kind of leave out the veggies and your britches all get kind of tight, you realize, oh, it's because I was kind of forgetting that veggie section. And that's a lot of times you put something else, you let other things flow over onto the veggie side and gets you in trouble. Okay, so I suggest take 5 things that you do eat frequently and measure those foods so you get to learn what they look like in your plate and in your bowl. And if they're foods that are tempting to overeat, eat them out of the same bowl, the same cup, so that you know right where to fill it. If it's juice and you know you tend to overdo it, get one of those little juice cups like your grandma had and drink out of that. if you're having juice occasionally. So those few things that tend to tempt you and you tend to overdo them, eat them out of one of those bowls that keeps you safe. If I have ice cream, you know what I eat it out of? This is funny. No, that is naughty. He said the carton. I try not to do that. I put it in one of those little, it's literally, you know, when I finish a laundry thing, I take the little plastic thing off the top and I end up washing it, and it's like the perfect little ice cream cup. I know y'all are like, she's crazy. But it's clear, and it's about a half a cup, and you put it in there, and you can get lots of little bites out of it. But if you get a big bowl and try to put one scoop in there, that looks ridiculous. And you go, poor me, I need to go get some more out of the carton. Right? So go ahead and put it in a small bowl, or even those pretty little parfait cups or the mason jars that are real small and skinny. Put it in there if you're going to have a splurge so that you can enjoy it and not feel sorry for yourself while you do it. Okay? It makes it more enjoyable. All right, common portion pitfalls. Too much of a good thing is still too much. Some of you might have made a little bit of progress through Team Lean and you're realizing, gosh, I've eaten so much healthier, but I'm not making the progress that I want. It could be that you're eating healthier, but too much. I get this a lot. People say, I eat so clean. I follow the clean eating diet, but the clean eating diet doesn't tell you anything about how much you need versus how much somebody else needs. So you have to be careful with your volume based on what you need. How you eat, if you eat too fast, you usually eat too much, so you may need to slow that down. Brands vary, so you may get one thing and think you're doing well, and then you realize you got a version with a lot more salt or sugar or something like that to watch out for. And so how much you eat is important as what you eat. These are the things that when people are trying to eat healthy that I see get them in trouble. Nuts, peanut butter, cheese, starchy vegetables, pizza, and juice. Not any of those are really horrible for you, but they're easy to overdo, especially if you think they're healthy. Then you eat like 3 spoons of peanut butter, and you have to work out for 4 days to get that off. Okay? So just be careful not to overdo it. All right, so measure and record everything you eat the first week of every month. I do think that's a great idea because it's not excessive, but the first week of every month, go ahead and go through your calendar for the real world for the rest of 2016 and make a note that you're going to measure and weigh everything. Measure and record everything for that first week. And then get in the habit of doing that, and once you've maintained your goal weight for 6 whole months and it's the new you, then you can take that off your calendar. It's an easy thing to do. You can even do it as a team. You can exchange. You can get in that little MyFitnessPal where you become friends together, kind of like you do on Facebook within MyFitnessPal or some of those other things where you can share your, they'll say, Susie, you haven't had enough today, or it'll give you a little alerts that you've eaten too much or something like that to keep you accountable. Okay, that's a good idea. There's some other things you can do over the holidays, and I will talk about those in a second. Go ahead. Thanks. Sweet tooth satisfiers, raise your hand if you have a sweet tooth in here. Okay, a lot of people do. That's okay. These are some ideas. If you need it creamy, crunchy, hot, or cold, there's different things. One of my very favorite things that's actually more satisfying than you think is frozen raspberries. It's really good. That's the go-to making kids' lunches at 9:30 p.m. snack. And you put it in your little cup, not in a big bowl, and it's crunchy and sweet and tart and all those kind of things that sometimes your mouth is after, and cold all at once. But it's very little calories, very little sugar even for a fruit, and lots of fiber. So there's little things you can do like that. Or if you really want a big coffee and you can have a decaf with very little, just a little bit of milk or something in it, it gives you that cozy feeling without the frappuccino that we saw on the slide before, that 600 calories. Okay, that can get you into trouble. Okay, so there's just some different things. And sometimes people say, if I have one cookie, I'm going to want 10. So I'm just going to skip it. Like people ask for me an M&M. I'm like, I don't want one M&M. I do not want one M&M. I want the whole bag of M&Ms or no M&Ms. One M&M just makes me want more M&Ms, and that's just not worth it to torture myself and have like M&Ms in my teeth, right? You know, you have to get quickly to your toothbrush if you have one M&M, right? Okay, so sometimes it's the same way with the cookie. But you might say, you know what, though, I could put one on my plate and really enjoy this and eat it slowly and savor it. Or you might say, bringing those Oreos in my house is a bad choice because me and you have tangled before and you won. So you might just not invite that into your house again. So you know you, and if you don't know you, you need to pay attention to these things, okay? So those are just some ideas, and they're also in the book. I won't read them all to you one at a time, but here's some tips for chocolate lovers. Raise your hand if you're a chocolate lover. You know, there's research that shows chocolate makes you feel good when you eat it. It actually does. So does bananas. They actually do. So there's reasons that your body likes those things. Sometimes it's the sugar, and sometimes it's just the whole serotonin and everything else experience that comes with it. So here are some ideas. A single-serve chocolate pudding, a mini ice cream sandwich. Again, if you're thinking, oh, that whole box is in trouble, then don't get the ice cream sandwiches, for example. If it's a protein bar, be careful because a lot of times they dip them in a saturated fat, so you got to be real careful to get more of that than you want. But sometimes that's a contained amount. Like if you used to do big hot brownies and you move to a protein bar that's dipped in chocolate, that might be an improvement. Okay? The Kind bars are one of the best ones to do. The Kind savory bars don't have chocolate and they're even better for you. And they have some, they make you feel kind of indulgent, but they don't way overdo it because they're mostly natural. But you do have to eat a little less nuts somewhere else or a little less fat somewhere else because they're usually kind of glued together with the nuts. Okay, you can have some chocolate skim milk. That's actually better than you think, and it's not adding all that much sugar. Melt dark chocolate chips and dip a couple strawberries in it. Okay, you can use just one of those teeny little prep cups and put a few in the bottom and then dip a strawberry in there. Now again, if your next thought is, I should not bring home that bag of chocolate chips and think I'm just going to melt a tablespoon of them, then don't do that. Don't put yourself in that position. But maybe when you're out with somebody, you can split a brownie or something like that, or get one of those little, you know how they have those little desserts in shot glasses a lot of times now that they give you a little sample of? That might be a safer place. You might not even want to have desserts in your house at all. It might just be too easy to overdo it in a weak moment, and hopefully you won't have your weak moment at the restaurant with your friends. That's less likely, so maybe you just don't bring it home. All right, so quick quiz on a safe splurge. If chocolate is your very greatest temptation and most favorite food, which of the following would be a safe splurge? Buy a bag of Hershey's Kisses on sale after Halloween? Put them in the freezer for a time of need. When you make brownies at home, try to get your friends and family to eat them all up so you don't have to. When you buy your kids snacks for a special event at school, get only single servings, one for each of them and one for you. That's the answer. D, get the sale 10-pack of fun-sized candy bars and eat them all at once so you don't have to look at them anymore. People tell me this before Team Lean. They're like, I'm ready for Team Lean, and I'm always nervous because that means they ate everything up and they're ready to go. Call your team and tell them, since we all lost weight this week, let's go to Brewster's together and let loose. Okay, these are not safe splurges. The middle one is pretty safe. You've got to be a little strategic because, again, we all have our weak moments, and we don't want things right in our reach when we have our weak moments. All right, so just remember, a splurge is not a binge. It's a strategic time that you've thought of something in controlled settings. Okay? I have one friend who struggles with this so much that I've asked her, why don't you just make a rule that you'll just only have sweets with me or with your husband or with a friend, because she's got kids at home and they don't stop her at all. They make fun of her like, Mommy loves those, da-da-da-da. But she overdoes it big time, and she agreed that she's just going to only eat those foods around adults. Because adults are going to be like, girl, what are you thinking? You know? And her kids just let her not, they don't pay attention because they're little. So a lot of times you just need some accountability when you do things. Again, is it worth it? The Smoothie King Slim and Trim Strawberry Medium is 560 calories. Now, if that's your meal, and if your brain registers that you just had a meal and it holds you 3 to 4 hours to 5 hours like a meal should, then maybe that will work. For me, if I have a smoothie, I'm like, that was good. What's for lunch? My body's like, that was a drink. I want to chew something. But everybody's different. Some people can do a smoothie. For some people, a smoothie is the best thing because it helps them zone in on one thing and be done rather than go into a bunch of packages and kind of go into some binging behaviors that they have. So everybody's different, and be careful with it. Be careful not to just think it's just a light thing because it's a smoothie, because it can be pretty heavy. I'll tell you what, Five Guys ensures that dietitians will never go out of business. It's very sad to me that that is just the regular fries. 620 calories. That's no burger, no drink. I don't know. I've never gone there because it just makes me think I should probably not go in. Bicycling for an hour and 35 minutes is what it takes to burn off that side. Doubles tennis up there for the Slim and Trim Strawberry. The Starbucks Cinnamon Dulce Latte Whipped Cream Venti is a 50-minute jog. And those are extras. None of those are things that, that make up an important meal that you have to have. So be careful with those extras. Go ahead. I do think everybody does need to know that the Panera chocolate chip cookies are over the size of a regular meal. Because I hate to be the person that tells you that, but like if you go to work and they give those out, a lot of times they're like catered meals and things, and people bring those and they think that's the end of their meal, and that's actually the double of their meal. It doubles the calories of their meal sometimes. So just be really careful. The Starbucks $4.90, there's a 510 calorie hot chocolate type Frappuccino that if you put them both together, they come out to exactly 1,000 calories as a snack. So just be careful. And I'm not saying you can't ever do it, but just it might not be worth it, right? It might not be worth it. Okay, we're going to move to this side. All right, hunger log. This is something just to help you pay attention to your hunger, and we're wrapping up in the next couple minutes because it's right at 7:30. But if you come into a meal hungry, starving, 0, and you leave at a 10, then you're probably taking too long between meals, okay? So try to come in around the 2 or 3 point and leave around the 7 or 8 point, knowing that you'll be eating again in a handful of hours. And plan in those strong snacks so that you don't have to go so many hours that you come in starving, okay? Because when people are starving, a lot of times they make bad calls. And a lot of times it's a habit. We feel like we need to eat till we're bursting, and people think it's supposed to unbutton your britches once you're done eating. That's not normal, okay? That's maybe normal on Thanksgiving, but that's not normal for every day. So be careful if you're overeating because you got too hungry. The success journal that's going around with the yellow, that's what this came out of. And there's a lot of little self-assessments in there so that you can see what's holding you up from reaching your best, because a lot of times it's something you didn't know. So that's what those little assessments are in there for. Thanks, Esmeralda. All right, and then holidays. You would be surprised how many holidays get people into trouble. I run like a 8-week program at different times during the year, and if I have run this program before around spring break, and I'm not willing to anymore. Companies call me and they're like, "Will you run your program? We want it for the spring." I'm like, "No, not in Augusta, Georgia, with spring break in the middle," because holidays mess people up, and I don't want them to do it on my watch. Okay, because it's really hard for people to make good plans in the holidays. So with Easter coming up and all those other things, you have to think ahead. You can't just go buy all that candy for your grandkids and then sit alone in the house with it and think you're going to be fine. It's just not all that likely. Or go to a big all-you-can-eat buffet and think you're just going to do that once, because a lot of times you do that once and you're like, and you get right back into that habit. So be careful not to undo by getting back into habit. So these are some ideas of some things you can do on different holidays, like Easter coming up. Decide how you want to spend a 200-calorie splurge and stop there. Decide in advance. This is what I'm going to have. Like, it might be the Cadbury egg or whatever it is that's really yummy for you on Easter, instead of like, it's Easter weekend, I'm going to eat everything in sight. Okay? So think ahead this time so that you can move forward and keep your weight off. And here's just several other ideas. This no candy on Halloween sounds so mean. It's not. I've done this before with the Y that I work at as a group. And it really, a lot of people came afterward and said, "Thank you for doing that. It was my first Halloween that I didn't get myself into so much trouble, and I just rose above it." And you can actually do that. You cannot get taken down by Halloween, because a lot of times that just leads you straight down through Thanksgiving and Christmas and then back to Team Lean, which we'd love for you to come back every year, but not necessarily because you did that slippery slope, okay? Those are just some ideas. A lot of times just writing down what you eat over a holiday weekend and sharing it with your accountability partner is like, and I tell my people, every time I teach aerobics, I teach on a Monday, which a lot of holidays fall on Mondays, and a lot of times around the year, and I tell people, you guys can eat whatever you want on Christmas, just write it all down and share it with a friend. Just eat whatever you want. So, all of a sudden there's accountability for you and for your friend paying attention to it. It helps you pay better attention. All right, so what's your plan for accountability? What's your menu plan for the week? What's your exercise plan? I know some of you are like, "I'm not a planner, I hate that." But once you get into a groove, it doesn't have to be your plan anymore. It can be your groove. Doesn't that sound better than a plan? Your groove? Okay? So you can have a groove that you stay in, and remember that holidays are the things I see most often throwing people off their groove. So you have to plan ahead for those holidays and think how you're going to strategically get through. You have to plan ahead for what you're going to say to the Girl Scouts on the way into Kroger to get you some healthy food. You have to think about what you're going to do on your all-inclusive trip this summer that says eat everything you like. You already paid for it. You might as well. You have to be careful, okay? And what about football season with a carload of hungry kids and you live in the drive-thru? You got to think ahead, okay? You got to make some of those casseroles in large portions and make some pita sandwiches for the go and some things like that you plan ahead, okay? Picture your divided plate. Remember? That's something I really want y'all to take home for all of the year, is that divided plate. Just picture that half a plate of veggies, quarter plate of lean protein, quarter plate of what? Carbs / grains / starches. And of course, like a little thumbprint of fat will do it. Okay. And just having a menu plan, this is an example of the menu plan for the first half of the 6 weeks in my book that's going around if you need some ideas. And also just having a plan, if you have just a 3-week cycle that you write down that you can repeat. Even if you repeat the same week for the first few weeks and get good at it, and then add another week of menu to it, then you can get good at that too, okay? So having a plan, even if it's a 2-week little cycle that you always repeat that you can change every once in a while when you want, will set you up for success. Does anybody in here have a menu plan already for the week? 2 people. Oh, no. Well, I'm really glad y'all came tonight, and I hope that you think about a plan, okay? Because you do need to have one for your meal. You want your fridge to match your goals, all right, and your menu to match those too. So thank you so much for coming, and if you want, I'll be over there to answer any questions that you have or to peek through any of the books that you have. And I think we're going to do a prize. Yes.